sir. Sliding right along.
And there are plenty of extras, so.
Good morning. Are you coming to the meeting? Okay. Do you mind if we get started before you get here? Okay. All right. See you later. Bye. Murph, that was Robert. He forgot all about the meeting. He's on his way, but he said go ahead and get started.
Okay. I'll do that.
You guys are separated 6 feet.
Same reason I'm not wearing a mask. I ain't buying what they're laying down anymore.
Until you have someone die in your family.
I have, okay? And we're all going to one of these days.
Yeah, but you don't need to die prematurely.
I'm already 60. I'm living bonus years. Anything after this is not premature.
My mother is 100.
Sweet.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's awesome.
Lucky lady.
You have 40 years ahead.
Did you get all the parts?
Are you cursing me? How many friends does she have left? That's exactly what my great-grandmother said. I don't want to live to be 105. I ain't got no damn friends as it is now. And she was 100 years old.
No, she has very few friends.
Yeah, you don't have many left when it gets to that point. All righty, let's call this meeting to order. Nick, please pledge allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 1 and 2 are taken care of. Number 3, we're going to have to postpone until City Council decides what's... Yes, ma'am?
I want to address that when you have a chance.
Okay, do we have any new applicants?
So here's the thing, I want direction from the DDA if you want me to run another ad for this position or bring the 2 applications forth that we had to the new council. Now that we'll have a council.
Okay.
So I just need guidance from the DDA.
Defer to council.
Yeah. Defer to council.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, we'll let that be the council's call.
Okay, so I'll ask the council
As it is
if they
there
want
to-
me to run a new ad, or if they want to just take the 2 applications that have been on hold and consider them.
Okay. Let me see. Yeah, we can't elect new officers until that's taken care of. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I did give a correction to Corey on item 8B. Rather than the Historical Society is currently putting together, it's actually the Historic Preservation Committee is considering putting together. I know the Historical Society and the Preservation Committee sometimes get confused. They have 2 different goals, 2 different authorities. So it's the Preservation Committee,
You said 8B?
8B, under the Cog Railway Interpretive Panels. It's the last sentence in the 2nd bullet.
I have business license fee for 8B.
Business license is 9.
Not on my agenda for the 10th.
Looking at the minutes.
Oh, the
okay.
minutes.
Okay.
We're not to the minutes. We're not
We're on-
quite to the minutes yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. So no additions, deletions, or corrections?
No.
Taken care of. Okay. Now, approval of minutes. Apparently we have something from Ms. Riley.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So under the minutes for October 6th, it's 8B, railroad journals.
So the correction is to change the Historical Society to the Historical Preservation Committee,
Correct.
and is not currently putting together, but is currently considering
Considering.
a grant application.
Grant applications.
Okay. So I guess that's an amendment to 8B, strike society, add preservation committee. Strike putting together, add consider.
Considering.
And then a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections.
Second?
Any opposed? Oh, wait. Okay, we have a first and we have a second. Anything else? Does anybody? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Go forth and make the correction, sir. Okay, Tanner, bringing us up to snuff on the finance report and where we're going with that.
Okay. I gave you several pages to review. One is a transaction detail by account. Does everyone have that? I passed them around. I'm not sure where they...
They're right down there on the end.
Do you need one too?
Anyone in the audience need a copy? I think we have extras.
Just the one that you gave us?
No, there are 2 more pages. I'm sorry, I started passing them around before I
Okay.
told you guys there were plenty of extras, so.
Thank you, sir.
With
Okay.
transaction detail by account.
Yep, page 1, you'll see on the backside is page 2. I presented one of these at the last meeting for the first time. This is just a list of every expense that I have recorded in the general ledger I created for the DDA. So if we've cut a check, or spent funds for something that's an expense, it's listed here for this year, for 2020, year to date. So for instance, you'll see the bond interest payments, not the principal. Principal payments are a reduction in a liability, so it's not really an expense. But the interest that we pay is an expense. So the interest is there. The advertising / legal notices, that $50 is for the sponsorship of the community events calendar. Top Gun facility, that was the pressure washing expense, et cetera, et cetera. So this is everything I have recorded for us so far for the year in terms of expense. If you add up each of the expenditures in these various accounts, you'll get to the next page, which is a typical profit and loss budget versus actual. So I guess the next document is a profit and loss budget versus actual. Not only do you see the total of expenditures here, but you'll see the revenues as well. I presented this at the last meeting as well. This is just an updated report. Okay, so you can see where we're at as compared to the 2020 budget. Yes, Sally?
Question under the TIP reimbursements. Who is Woodland Park Associates for $61,000?
That's Trail Ridge Apartments.
Oh, thank you.
So, Tanner,
Yes.
the reduction in the actuals versus the budgeted for the TIP reimbursements, why is there such a large discrepancy?
You know, I was just looking at that, and for some reason, the profit and loss budget versus actual year-to-date amount does not equal what I have on the transaction detail by account. It is missing Purple Mountain Hospitality's reimbursement amount of $15,261.40. And I'm not sure why that is. So I'll have to go refresh this report and see if I can figure out why that's missing. But essentially what that means is what's recorded in the ledger is less than what was budgeted for the year. So if you go to the transaction detail by account, you'll see the breakdown of expenses in that account. TIF reimbursements, it's on the first page toward the bottom. So far there are 3 for a total of $81,751.06. That is still less, significantly less than the $121,949 that's been budgeted. And there are several factors that go into, you know, the differences between budget versus actual, including abatements. So if one of the parties to one of our TIF reimbursements files for abatement and is granted those abatements by the county, that effectively reduces the assessed value of their property for prior years, which effectively reduces the amount of TIF revenue calculated pursuant to their agreement and the reimbursement that they should receive. That was the case this year.
On one specific property or another?
One particular property. Other factors would include the agreements require that the other party to TIF reimbursements notify us of their tax payments as and when they make them and request their reimbursement. If someone has not notified us of their payment and requested reimbursement, then our end isn't triggered to do the calculations and submit for the reimbursement. You've probably seen the car wash that's under construction right now next to the Human Bean. Taylor Mountain Enterprise is one of the parties to an agreement with us and is owed reimbursement based on certain calculations. The calculations include the new assessed value, or today's assessed value, and the difference between that and the base value, which was the assessed value of the property at the time we entered the agreement. Well, in this particular case, we budgeted for TIF reimbursement, but the car wash is not yet built. The assessed value on the property has not yet significantly increased, and the property owner has not submitted any proof of tax payment request for reimbursement. So does that help?
It does. Only one final question. So in the last 2 months of this year, are you expecting further requests for TIF reimbursements? What was
Yes.
already have been budgeted?
Yes.
So that'll change this number a bit.
Somewhat. And so that's a really good segue, unless there are other questions on these two documents. That's a good segue into the third one. Sally?
I have one more. On the NES payments, I may not have recalled this correctly, but I thought your contract with NES was for $5,000, not $5,500. So the board was in agreement to spend an additional amount on NES's work.
The actual NES proposal was for, I think, $15,000, and the board approved $5,000 for moving forward. And at one point, I'd have to go back and review our minutes, but at one point, we knew that we were going to go past that amount somewhat, and it was decided to proceed.
So segueing.
Yep, into the third document. Okay, so this is the budget that we've been working on. And I'm going to need some direction. So the multicolored budget page I provided is 2 pages. There are 2 sides here. The side that we'll begin with is the most complete, and it shows 2015's actual, 2016's actual, 17, 18, and 19, as well as the 2020 adopted budget and our year-end projections, so that would be this year, and the 2021 budget request that was approved at our last meeting, and the 2021 budget request that I would like to present and discuss with you guys. Do you all see that? Okay. So the gold columns on the far right, the 2 columns, the gold column to the left is what was presented and approved at our last meeting. On October 21st of this year, the City Council held a special meeting to discuss the budget, the 2021 budget, and during that meeting, they discussed DDA budget. There were, I think, 5 council members present, and 3 of them were pretty vocal about changing the DDA's proposed budget. So they referred to our discretionary spending and wanting to set all discretionary expenditures to 0. When they went through line by line, what was described as discretionary included beautification, professional services, information technology, advertising and legal notices, travel and training, and supplies, as well as Woodland Station improvements. So, reacting to the conversation that I saw the council have, I've revised our budget to bring forward and submit to the board for discussion. So, in this document before you, all of the light green shaded boxes are what the council described as discretionary, and I've added a couple of expense accounts to that. So I have included telephone charges as discretionary, and all of the payroll expenditures that we haven't incurred in some years, just for the sake of showing a bigger picture than just the few expense accounts that were discussed during the council meeting. So, on the far right column, let's go back up to the top, because there's one other significant change here to show you, and it's our TIF property tax revenues, the first revenue line. You'll see what I presented at last month's meeting was $696,000, and during this meeting, on this report, I'm presenting $735,294. That is because we have finally received a preliminary certification of values from the county. If you'll recall the last report, I told you we had no documents or no information that we could base any new projections from, and I carried over into 2021's budget the 2020 year-end projected revenue. Well, now we do have a new document, and it's a preliminary certification of value. That preliminary certification shows an assessed value in the TIF area, or in the DDA's district, of $9,383,892. Well, when multiplying that by 78.357 mils, we get $735,294 in TIF revenue. The certification of values is not finalized until December 10th, so it's still subject to change. The 2019 mills are what were used to derive 2020's tax revenue. Those are subject to change. Mills are not certified by the taxing authorities until December. These may fluctuate. So as they do, I can update this. But right now, this is the most up-to-date information that I have, and therefore I've changed the budgeted revenue. Okay? So moving down the report, in the far right column, I've changed nothing from what was presented before except for those discretionary spending accounts that the council mentioned. You'll see I zeroed them out. So that is what was described by some of the council members. I would, I guess for the sake of conversation, before we get into the discussion, if you turn the page, I put together something of a comparison for the sake of understanding what's happened with DDA spending over the years. So the left columns are identical to the 2015 actual and the 2021 budget request columns from the reverse side that you just looked at. Those are just copies of what we just saw. To the right of that, you'll see a portion of this report repeated, and the headings are 2015 actual and 2021 DDA proposed. This 2015 actual are the actual expenses recorded in what we're considering at this point, what I've considered the discretionary spending accounts. Everything the council had mentioned, plus payroll. And if you look at the 2021 DDA proposed, you'll see how that's changed from 2015. There is no longer any payroll cost, where in 2015 the DDA's payroll expenses totaled $55,246. This was for 2 employees. Now keep in mind the City of Woodland Park paid 2/3 of the salary, so what's shown there is 1/3 of the cost of those employees. Okay, so the total cost between the city and DDA for those employees was $166,000. Those employees were not replaced. There is no longer any payroll cost, not only to us, but to the City of Woodland Park for those positions. And hasn't been since, well, partway through 2016 is when most employees left. So moving on down, you'll see if we add up all of the expenditures in 2015, the discretionary expenditures, down there toward the bottom you'll see $59,965. That is the total discretionary spending of the DDA in 2015, 5 years ago. And if you add up the 2021 DDA proposed discretionary spending, you'll see $50,000 $250. Is everybody following?
No phone, that's where he's seeing this.
So it's on, yep, the side you're looking at.
Okay, I get you.
And look down to the bottom where I've totaled those expenditures. Now again, these are not all the expenditures for these years, 2015 or 2021 proposed. These are just what we're putting in the discretionary category. So I'd like to point out that in 2021, what we had proposed was to increase investment in Woodland Station by up to $30,000. We budgeted for that in the event that we need it to further the development. If we're successful in reaching an agreement with developers and moving forward with subdivision and any support for the development, we may need funds available to
Pay for that?
meet our end of the bargain, if you, whatever that proves to be. We also increased beautification to $14,000. That's a total increase in investment to the community of up to $44,000 over 2015, which didn't include any expense in those accounts. So $44,000 more dollars potentially to be invested in the community. And that still totals a $9,715 less in discretionary spending than 5 years ago. $44,000 more invested in the community, $9,700 less discretionary spending overall. I consider that a huge improvement. But that's me. So I wanted to share that, point that out to everybody. Jared?
I suggest that we go back to the old ways. Let's see, what else was in there? Expense of the car, probably the insurance and everything, the expense of the building, the house, the offices and all. I'd say that I'm a little bit put off, more than a little bit, that we've got council people that are attacking us for doing 10 times the amount that was being done when they run the show. We need to remind them that they're not running the show for the DDA. They're not allowed to. And I'm a little bit, fiery. But I'm tired of it.
Well,
Want to respond to you, Jerry?
You're not going anywhere. Misery loves company.
Well, Jerry, I share your sentiment, and I was astounded and perplexed at the proposals that came out at council on this matter. So I think it's appropriate for the DDA to articulate this in brevity to council, because I don't think council really appreciates the complexity of what the DDA is doing. I do get the sentiment behind it, that council sees that the DDA is a runaround the people in its very foundation. So there is this sentiment to say, let's close it down, get it done with. So I understand that, but that doesn't justify this particular trim that I see.
I would agree with you to an extent, but the reality is that
You're
that's
on.
on or not.
You're
But the reality is that it's self-serving. There's council members that have an agenda, and if you just say it's for They're tired of it and all. The council's the ones that created the DDA. They're the ones that set the conditions and all. And it was running nice and dandy when they were running the game. Now that they're not, then we're the bad guys, and they're the knights trying to save the kingdom. Well, I say it's not so, and I'm just getting tired of being the whipping boy. But there are certain council members that have an agenda, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Dan, go ahead, Dan.
Well, so here are a couple more thoughts for the board, and then I guess whatever discussion, and I'm going to ask for direction on how to structure our budget if the board wants any changes. One is the council's requested information from the DDA, some sort of report to explain the budget and tell them why we built it the way we did. And judging from the discussion I witnessed, which was, it didn't seem terribly formal. There was no motion or vote or anything. It was just sort of a general consensus as to where they're going. If I could describe that, I'd say what they're expecting is that I come to council on the 19th with some notes and some comments and explain why it is we've put down what we've put down. And they're leaning toward, prior to having any of that, their position at this point is strike all discretionary spending, set it to zero, and then during 2021, should the DDA wish to expend any funds, we first go to council and make the request for supplemental appropriation, at which time they would decide whether or not the DDA can take the action and expend the funds that the board would have already approved. So that's the process that I think they have in their minds for us for 2021. Some.
And from where did these supplemental appropriations come?
The council, their authority to amend our budget. So
the city will be appropriating the money and giving it to us?
Well, it's DDA money. The city, by statute, cannot receive and expend TIF revenue. That's why DDAs exist. A DDA can receive TIF revenue. The city cannot. They hold the fund, so they do actually receive the check, but they don't have the authority to expend those funds. They do have...
Then that puts them totally in control of those funds, and it would be violation of the spirit of the law.
For them to micromanage the budget
Yes.
and the expenditures, well, okay.
What did Mr. Benedetti have to say about it?
Well, he did send us a confidential client communication that needs to be sent out to the board. But in general, there's no real clear answer yet from my interpretation of having read that early this morning.
Excuse me. May I make a suggestion? For what it's worth, we have scheduled a council work session on the 16th, so that's next Monday. The council's hoping that by the 19th, the council would like to hopefully approve the first reading of the budget. My recommendation would be to any correspondence to get it to the council before that 16th work session, because that's when they're going to put their sleeves up, dig deep into everything and lay it out.
Okay, and what has been the savings to the taxpayers since we took over our own business control and did not operate with an executive director? What is just give me a ballpark of what the savings to the taxpayers been?
If you take the $55,246 that were the total payroll costs in 2015, and multiply that for all of 2017, 18, 19, and 20, that's something like $660,000. If we go through next year without those payroll costs, that's $800,000. By the time you remove professional services, which would be the administrative assistants that we haven't worked with, contracted with in recent years. It's still a total savings of approximately $820,000 between the city and the DDA. That does not include any calculation for payroll increases, which if you were to look back historically at 2014 and 13 and 12, you'll see the payroll costs climbed consistently every year. So just taking the 2015 fixed amount times 17, 18, 19, and 20, it's, I don't know, 55,000 times 4, $620-something thousand.
Yeah, that does not include the amount that the city was paying.
That
For those
includes the
tickets.
city's amount.
That
Our amount
includes
would
the
be a couple $100,000,
Okay.
200,
All right.
and the city paid 2/3. So whatever we paid, multiply that by 3 if you want the total savings. There's also reduction in some of the other expense accounts, like telephone charges. You'll see in 2015 we had $416 in telephone charges. That dropped to $162 in 2016 when we still had staff for part of the year, and we haven't incurred any telephone charges at all ever since then. So there are some details like that. If you study the budget, you'll see the nuances, over time. So in any event, I wanted to let you know I need to get back to the council. They've essentially requested some sort of report, and so I think I need to go to the council and explain the DDA's budget, answer their questions, and do what I can to inform their decisions. But I don't want to do that without this board discussing it and giving me any direction that the board wants to provide. Then there's another consideration that comes to my mind immediately, and that is the effect of their proposed changes on our operations. And so, for instance, if the information technology services account goes to $0, we will not be able to afford a website. The website is where we publish all of our minutes. They're up there for the public to review. There's a link to watch our meetings. The public can just go to the DDA's website, click the link, and watch the meetings. The bylaws are there. The foundation plan is there. The revised statutes that define DDAs are there. That expense, which this year is $179.40, also includes DDA email addresses. And I know many board members aren't using those very much, but we do use those to copy, all official correspondence to maintain the most thorough public record that we can. So, professional services, if that goes to $0, we will no longer have an administrative assistant. Who will record the meetings? Who will draft the minutes? Who will publish the agendas?
Maybe Suzanne can put out a call for a volunteer to come and do that as well.
Supplies.
Application for a volunteer to come and do the minutes for us and stuff. Is that possible?
Are you meaning me?
He's kidding.
You're Suzanne.
We have a hard enough time finding board members to volunteer. Okay.
So, supplies. We haven't expended any this year. I'm not projecting any, but I printed a lot of paper. There's toner and paper for all these reports. In the event that it gets to a point where we're printing a lot of things or need any other supplies for batteries or have to replace recorders or something, that's why that's there. We can strike it. It's probably a non-essential expense, but those are the considerations. There's another one that I think is very significant, and that is in dealing with the property. So we are under contract with the city government, the city council, and the DDA board have an agreement in place, and that agreement says that we will dispose of Woodland Station for development. Our task is to try and bring about the development of the property. We have an interested party right now who we're about to discuss the first step in contractual agreement with, an exclusive negotiating agreement, which is intended to lead us to a disposition and development agreement. As we negotiate terms with that developer, there will be obligations on the developer and obligations on the authority that are subject to negotiation, things that they are going to be required to do and things we will be required to do. If we agree, or if we enter those negotiations, agreeing to support and cooperate with the subdivision process, perhaps to employ certain professionals that have been recommended, surveyors or others, to help get the project, bring the project to fruition, we should have in our budget the funds needed to execute our obligations. If we agree to do things knowing we do not have the authority to actually execute them, then are we negotiating in good faith? Can we really enter that agreement? So I see a conflict there. If we are really trying in good faith to get this done and posturing ourselves for the best possible scenario in terms of development of the land, I think we built the right budget to begin with. But that's just me. If the council does change our budget, as they've described, then we need to reconsider our approach to negotiations and how to negotiate an agreement, knowing we have to go back to council and ask for their decision, their approval on any expenditure going forward, which puts the authority to them and not us. In my mind, that means we can't agree to things in advance. We just have to tell the developer,
So the way this would have to work is that the developer would have to come to us, would have to discuss it with us, and then we would have to take it to council, however much later that council meeting was, so that we can get it on the agenda, and then council has to come back to us and tell us what they want, and then we go back to the developer and tell them what. So it's another layer of bureaucracy to slow us down. That's all I see. And $20,250. At the end of the day, who purchased the land? Did the DDA purchase the land?
From the city.
From the city. Oh, the city purchased the property and then set up a DDA to purchase the property. Okay? I'm sorry, it takes money to conduct business. And we've budgeted $20,250 out of a potential and saved a lot of, way more than that over the period of the last 4 years. I guess we could go to council and say, please let us know. However, I think this is totally not within the spirit of the law, let alone within the letter of the law. Because that means if it's going to be that way, the DDA can just step out and the developer can come directly to the council, which would be a direct violation.
Total violation. Yeah, total.
Okay, so how do we conduct business without money?
So, can I weigh in one more thing here? I think the bigger question that really has to be addressed, that's making this micromanaging even on the table, is council. Some members of council are bent on DDA going away. So if we look at that, at the reality of that, that's their opinion, but it is exactly as you're saying, violating why the DDA is there and the fact that you have authority to act. So may I suggest that what you've just articulated here, Tanner, is great. And the perspective, like you've saved the city 800 and some odd thousand. There's a function of the DDA to complete this project. Would you consider going to council and explaining to them what it will cost? Let's just say we go down the road of those who particularly want to get rid of the DDA. What will it cost the city to get rid of the DDA? And get some numbers, some reality for them to say, you want to take this over? okay, here's what you're going to lose, and here's what it's going to cost you. So if you want to plan for that in your budget, that's real. But to cut the functioning arms off the DDA now for some purpose which is amorphous, it's not exactly germane to what's going on right now, it may put it in perspective for them to temper this demand. I'm only one vote on council, but I think if you can present that picture, it may help temper that passion of blindly trying to close the DDA down.
Your insights, why do they want to do away with the DDA?
I cannot answer that question. You know, I can't answer that question for them. I don't know the history of those sentiments from those individuals.
I think a lot of us know why they want.
But I don't.
I know,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that let's be.
What, realistic?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think it's realistic.
A thought on this too. It appears that by defunding the DDA in this particular proposal, that they're really wanting to correspond to those that want to dissolve the DDA. Yes, we cannot even really move forward to really develop Woodland Station, without the funds that are necessary to develop that as a project and define what it is that we're actually selling. If they do attempt to defund and then annihilate the DDA, does that automatically then dissolve all of the TIF agreements that we have going forward? Because that would be a violation, I suspect, of the charter amendment or the charter provision that prevents allowing or causing certain businesses to move forward through incentives. So all of the agreements that we've got now conceptually could dissolve. So it really impacts those businesses tremendously. So there's a lot of parameters to this that they're perhaps not seeing.
Do we not have contracts with those businesses?
We do, and I'm not the legal expert on it by any means, but my understanding is that should the council wish to dissolve the DDA, they become responsible for all of the DDA's contractual liabilities, so including the TIF reimbursement agreements and all the debts, the bond debts, the debt to the city. So if we still owe the city $700 and some odd thousand and they dissolve us, they know they're not getting paid that money, right? If they dissolve us, the DDA, then they become responsible to Vectra Bank for the 2012 and 2018 series bonds. And they also become responsible for those TIF reimbursement agreements. And if they dissolve those, I would guess they'd be subject to lawsuit by those parties.
And I would suspect the TIF revenue stream that we get would go away too.
Correct.
So they would not have the corresponding cash flow to pay the various agreements that we have, though.
So in other words, the taxpayer would be the victim in this case.
They would probably be in violation of the city charter.
Well, I'm saying the taxpayer, but the city makes no money except off the taxpayer. That's where all of their funds come from, which makes the taxpayer the victim in this case, should it involve the lawsuit. And the TIF revenues go away. There's no longer any money to pay for the stuff. And, this was set up by previous administrations. And the way I see it, it is the responsibility of the city council to see it through and the DDA to finish the job that was set up to be done.
Sure.
In the best possible fashion.
So one more nuance here is Mr. Carter. Mr. Dwayne Carter came to see me on Saturday evening at my business. And he said he had stopped in to see Mary Jo and found out she was ill and in the hospital, and he was trying to get an update on any progress at Woodland Station around the Cobb car, which, as you guys know, he paid a significant amount of money, I think it was $12,500 or so, to fund the costs of moving the car up to Woodland Park and buy a plaque, a bronze plaque with his late wife's image and name. And I haven't seen the plaque, but that's Mr. Carter. So he is very interested in seeing more improvement around that cog car. He's very much in support of the interpretive panels that the Historic Preservation Committee is working on. He's very supportive of a platform around it, any other landscape improvements, and he was asking for an update. I informed him of what our budget was so that in the event we move forward and could install any improvements, we were postured for it, and what the council has said and where that leaves us in terms of our ability to negotiate agreements, install any improvements, or really any of that. And then he became concerned. So he's considering attending the council meeting on the 19th, and he's made some other recommendations that I forwarded one email from him to you. He also recommended giving each of the council members one of the cog car books that his daughter put together, if you guys remember the books that were published. Inviting certain people to that November 19th council meeting. People, I believe the name is Tala Schweitzer, that's researching the interpretive panels. Carla. Okay, I got that wrong. Carla Schweitzer. Paul Summer, who negotiated an agreement between the city and the Broadmoor, I guess, the purchase agreement for the car. And then members of the Mountain Arts Council who supported moving the car up here. Jeff Cahill and his wife, who donated their time in helping to produce the bronze plaque for the car, etc. So I'm just relaying the communication I've had with him to you guys so you have it. And at this point, I would be interested in whatever the board wants to do with this budget, or how you guys care to instruct me regarding moving forward with the budget and with City Council.
I would say that we will have to attend the sixth session on the 16th to try and iron this out, and possibly bring to draw these certain things to the attention of the City Council of the potential for problems and that could be created by this move prior to going forward.
I would say that you should present the budget that you need to function with properly, according to the law, according to your charter, according to the events unfolding in terms of the negotiations. And as opposed to modifying that budget as requested by some council members. I'm not saying you can't do that, but my recommendation would be you need to function frugally, responsibly with the people's money, with the charter you've been given. And so your budget needs to reflect that. Then go to council to say, if you're taking these other steps, these extreme steps here, what's the cost to the public? And what's your end game here? Because if it's to take those funds, put them towards what council certainly wants to do right now is debt reduction, and you're shooting us in the foot with revenues, is it the best? So I would, when somebody tries to put you in a box that you can't function in, is that smart? Is that smart for everybody?
Am I mistaken in the belief that once that would be a legal battle as to where those funds actually went, because the city is not authorized to spend TIF funds or receive them.
I don't know how to contemplate that legal battle. If the budget were amended as council described, then my understanding is any unspent money simply ends up in the unrestricted unassigned fund balance. The fund balance grows, which it's been doing for some years. Money's been going to the fund balance, and the fund balance has grown. And if you look at the bottom of the budget draft that I've given you, the multicolored document, you'll see...
On the front page.
Yeah, front page with all the years shown, the gold columns on the right, all the way to the very bottom, the last numbers written at the bottom in the left column, the left gold column, 2021's column, and the right column, 228,823 and 317,188. Do you see that? Okay. That's the unrestricted cash balance. I had in the last budget, the budget this board approved, 228,823 budgeted as the year-end unrestricted cash balance. If the council amends the budget as they described, and our revenues increase $40,000, which is what we're projecting now because of the certification of values I received, that number grows to $317,188. That money isn't just gone, or it's not just in the city's coffers or whatever. It's still in the DDA's coffers, if you will. It's just unspent. It's sitting there in the fund.
And what would that number be if you? What would the number be with the county certification, increased revenues, and your existing budget proposal?
Add basically 39,294. So if we say 40,000, it would be 268,823. Which 268,823 into 735, 294 is 36.5% of revenue. It's a rather healthy reserve. Maybe I should say rather generous reserve. Some would argue that's too much money, taxpayer money, to be collecting and just sitting on.
If it didn't go in the reserve, would it go towards debt reduction?
Or support for development at Woodland Station, or beautification of the downtown, or...
Well, given that negotiations are going on with Woodland Station, what's a reasonable reserve to have for that development at the stage that we're at with it now?
Well, if you're asking me, I don't know that we could be sitting on too much money if we're planning to assist the development with taxpayer funds, which, frankly, is the role of the DDA.
Robert, how strong is that defund the DDA concept on council?
I do not.
Just a couple of vocals?
Yes, if you listened to the meeting, you would have heard them. I don't think it's a sentiment shared by all of us. And the vote comes now that we have a seventh member, so it will be, it would have to come to that. But this is only, just so you're aware, this is preliminary first read of the budget. But this is a significant lack of understanding that's putting this on the table, in my opinion. And so, as Murph's saying, I think if you could navigate this water first, And it might require bringing up that whole topic, which is those who wanted to make the DDA go away. But even if they do, and even if that was a reasonable goal for the city, I think we should talk about it in a way that's win-win for everybody, and also respecting the offices that everybody's holding, because you guys are doing from my observation, in the time that I've been working with you, you're doing a very responsible, prudent, frugal job of administering the affairs of the city with the DDA. That's what I see, and others may not understand all of those pieces, so maybe giving them grace that it's needed to walk through some of that with them, not just in this year's budget, but in the whole picture.
Okay. I guess we need to get together and do a report. Does anybody have anything else to put in?
Suzanne, what time is that workshop?
It's at 5:30 on Monday.
Here? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The one other thing is, if you want, the mayor has set the agenda for no public comment. So my suggestion would be to contact council and see if you can get on as an agenda item.
And at the least, get something written.
Suzanne, are members of this board then classified as public or as an extension of city bureaucracy?
That's a great question.
Great question.
We'd have to direct that to the mayor. He has to make that decision
Yeah,
on who speaks and doesn't speak.
Yeah.
that's a great question.
I
Al.
think
Will the meeting be Zoom?
representatives from the board here are really representing a different thing than a public,
That's true.
off the street type person.
True.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, we'll still contact and get ourselves put in.
Oh, yes, it'll definitely be soon.
Yeah, very good.
So I'm not hearing any direction to,
I think we need to come before the city council and explain, we cannot operate without funds, okay? City councils, or whichever members of city council who are on the somewhat zealous side of wanting to see this go away, it would cost the city, it's going to cost the city a lot of money to make the DDA go away before its normal term.
and I think I am capable and willing enough to explain those things, at least to the best of my abilities, what the debts are, what the city would become responsible for if they were to dissolve the DDA. Not that that's their immediate plan, but certainly seems to be the goal. And so to help them understand how that works in terms of the debts that they become responsible for, the obligations that they become responsible for. I can also explain why we built the budget the way that we did, why we have money for IT, why we have money for professional services, why we have money for supplies, et cetera, why we've put money into Woodland Station improvements and beautification. Is that what I should be planning to do? Okay.
Everybody in agreement on that?
Well,
Yes?
I just got a comment. Sometimes, the more detailed that you get, the less effective it is, in my opinion. And I honestly think that we need to make sure that the general public is aware of what's going on. I think the council is going to do whatever they want to do. They've already got it figured out. And that if it is put, and so what we need to do is get numbers like 2015, what our expenditures were, what our costs, and what they currently are, in big red letters. Maybe Pat would be kind enough to put that in the paper, Just our point of view is, this is reality. And then The third column, this is what it's going to cost you when it's gone. So, I mean, just simple. I mean, that's how I operate. I think it should be approached.
Is there,
Tanner, go forth with your idea. I think everybody on the board is in agreement that we need to make that presentation to council as to how much it's going to cost and all that stuff, and also some of the legal ramifications that could ultimately be faced by the taxpayer.
if
Since
the
you're far more eloquent than me.
I don't know. If the approach is penny pinching and really getting down to zero wherever we possibly can, is there any desire to revisit the budget that we did approve? For example, IT services this year we spent $179.40. We budgeted $350. Should we take that down to $179.40? Travel training. We put $500 in there. That's for board retreat, or for example, this year, the $236 expended was in January of this year. It was a work session at the Woodland Country Lodge, wherein the board and the public engaged in a conversation about the COG car and the use of the car. If we were willing to lease it to businesses that, if you guys recall, we had a number of entities offering to lease the car, and we had a work session. It was in the evening, and some food was provided, and it cost $236. Do we leave $500 in that line item? Do we want to shave any more off? Show that we're tightening things as much as possible?
Right. I think that we should keep it the same right now, right? Until we meet with the city in their workshop and kind of, this is the budget we came up with. Keep it how it is right now and present that to them and get their feelings then. If we can shave and they require us to shave, then we do. But until now, why change it? We've already discussed it and approved it.
Murph.
Mr. Logan, please.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, I was not recognizing you as chair in my other comments. I apologize. All right. Well, you have just articulated something very close to the heart of council, and that is, what is the benefit to the community? So if the COG car is a visitor attraction, draws visitors, draws business, and we are not developing it as we could, seems to me like the funds, I think I recall Mary Jo wanting to get about, was it like a $40,000 increase to be able to do a platform around the COG car and do stuff? So how much of that can still be done and is being done in conjunction with the development of Woodland Station? And that's a picture to paint, in my opinion, because we're looking at, or council's looking at, all of the other organizations that are helping the city, whether it be the tourist center, the Main Street, and Woodland Park, keep Woodland Park beautiful. So there's a added value to highlighting what is the DDA going to do with the COG car in this budget period that is of benefit to the city. And is it time to? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's time just to do, mark time until the Woodland Station develops. But you brought up a great point. It's like that COG car, people want to lease it. If that's a benefit there, should we be ignoring it? And is there discussion? I'm sorry. I know Mary Jo presented to us the idea of building a platform, but I didn't hear that we jumped on it.
We should, at a minimum, be budgeting the items that we promised to Mr. you say Clark?
Dwayne?
Carter.
Carter?
Carter, okay. Mr. Carter. And so I think Tanner, unless somebody objects to it, I don't see any reason to change this budget from what it is.
Okay.
I realize we may get city council objection, but that's what we have to deal with. And at the end of the day, we have to have money to operate. And if the city council is going to be calling the shots as far as every penny spent, then I suggest that we just step out of the way and they can conduct the meetings and conduct the negotiations and conduct the development process.
Illegal.
I got that. And that's what they're trying to. That's what they're trying to hurt us. Right. So, if it's illegal, I don't want to be part of it.
I'm on city council. I don't want to be part of it.
I hear you.
I'm sure attorney would
Okay.
want to be part of it.
Yeah. So let's go forward and give the council the brief, Tanner.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, moving along, since we're trying to run out of time here. Okay, that took care of the finance report. We're going forward the 16th at 17:30 is the council work session. We'll be there. Okay, development proposals for Woodland Station. We're going to have to go into an executive session after this to discuss the contract that Paul Benedetti set. Do you have anything to put out, Tanner, as far as?
Well, we did, since our last meeting, Murph and Sally Riley and Paul Benedetti and Mike Williams and George Christian. Am I missing anybody? Myself?
Yes, and some other Mark and some other.
Crozier.
Yeah.
We're on a Zoom meeting, discussing steps to move forward. And everybody seems in support of staying the course, making whatever progress can be made as quickly as possible. And part of that was on our end to give the developer some assurance at this point that if they begin spending money on professionals and moving the process forward, their planning process, that we will not enter into an agreement with some other party that may come along. And the mechanism for giving them that assurance is an exclusive negotiating agreement that was drafted by our attorney, Paul Benedetti, and has been sent to the board for review. The developer has asked for as much time as possible to be included in that agreement. And there's another term that they've requested, no earnest money or no deposit money. I think we have $5,000 in that as a request from the DDA that developer put some money down, $5,000. So those terms are included in this draft and subject to negotiation. That's where it stands right now, that the developer has asked for those things and that we sign this and get it to him ASAP. So it's up to the board to discuss that and decide how to proceed. And we do have an executive session scheduled in the event there's contract negotiation to be done that shouldn't necessarily be witnessed by the other party, if that makes sense.
Board? Anybody?
I think we need to go into executive session.
All right, when we get to the end of this. Okay.
Sally?
Yes, Sally?
Yeah,
Please.
a couple of comments. This agreement is, I believe, a smart thing to do. I do believe, however, the development proposal that gets attached to this agreement with the description, you all need to be on the same sheet of music and make sure that it's agreeable to you. Because during our meeting, they were even talking about changes from the last concept plan. So It's important that the proposal that gets attached to this agreement is satisfactory to the board. Although it is also very important that Mr. Benedetti put in this agreement that that proposal does not lock you into it. So I was very pleased to see that whatever proposal you attach in description, it does not deem it to be acceptance of that proposal, nor deem it to be finally accepted. So, but that's really key. And then I saw one statement that I believe is a typo under 5.6. If negotiations do not culminate in an executed DDA, I believe that should say disposition agreement.
Yeah.
I think DDA is acronym for Disposition and Development Agreement.
And that is not what is used when it is first mentioned. It should be spelled out
Yeah, it's
as disposition agreement. So there is no confusion.
Agreed.
Agreed, agreed.
Thank you.
Those are very easy changes to make.
Are there?
Thank you, Sally. Anybody else on the contract?
I've got stuff, but it'll come out in
All right.
executive session.
There you go. Okay, do we want to get into the business support initiatives at this point?
There doesn't seem to be any movement on the sales tax vendor's fee at the council level from what I know, and council liaisons here, if I am not correct on any of this, just say so. However, the business license fee it does appear as though that will be reduced, possibly to $35 from $50 beginning in 2021. The last consensus was to reduce it from $50 to $42.50 in 2021, and then to $35 ongoing. And there was some discussion among the council and the city staff that it may be an administrative burden to step the fee down incrementally over 2 years, and it would just, for the cost of it, it would be simpler to just go to 35 now, well, in 2021.
The only caveat on that is the city manager said it would require some more financial adjusting to meet the decrease in revenues quicker instead of 2021, 2022. So I don't know whether he's acting on those or not, but that was the only contrary comment to doing it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Robert, help me out on this. And when you pay a fee, you expect some kind of value in return. Help me understand what the value that the business people get for paying this fee.
Al, that's a great question.
I know it. I see it as a revenue device, a tax.
I share your perception on that, Al.
Okay.
I share your perception on that, yes. And, yeah.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that.
You don't put me on the spot. I'm just so appreciative of hearing that voice in the community, because that goes on deaf ears too
Yeah.
in the
You get
process.
nothing for that money.
Huh?
You get nothing for that money.
Yeah. I mean, it has become a focus, has become an accounting dance. You know, that as a budget item, both this and the vendor fee, and I struggle with that, to be honest with you. Just the way the whole discussion has gone, it's a little bit perplexing. I made the case, and I don't know how this is going to be helpful in the long run, but I made the case that I have a foreign entity in terms of my business. It came from Arizona, so I get the Secretary of State renewal, and it cost me $10. I get something for that. I can legally operate my business in the state of Colorado. What benefit is there to the business owners is a perfectly valid question.
Secretary of State protects your trade name.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a great question. I don't know if this is a venue to solve it, but, you know, you make an excellent point. So,
Anybody else? Yes, Miss Suzanne.
As a reminder, that's on public hearing on the 19th.
The sales tax vendor fee, or the?
The business license.
Oh, okay.
Just as a reminder. We've had the initial posting and it's going to public hearing now.
Well, I still chalk that up to an accomplishment of this DDA. We initiated the conversation around that public policy. Started it back in, I believe, November of last year is when it first came forward in this room by this board, and ultimately culminated in a recommendation that we formally made to the council to reconsider this policy. And although their decision is not what we recommended, it is movement in that direction. So, good job, everybody.
Agree.
Is there a political backlash within council? Because we have promoted the sales tax, vendor fee, and business license fee removal, that they think, maybe we're not the appropriate people to be doing some of this stuff?
I like your rhythm. I can't address that, Al. I can only say I fully support both the elimination of the, well, I shouldn't say elimination because that's premature, but the reduction in the business license and the giving back of the vendor fee to the vendors. And I'm a little bit perplexed in how the vendor fee is going now. Now, budget-wise, it's going to be removed as even being, showing it as a revenue stream. I don't quite understand the accounting point of that. But also kudos to you for bringing light to the vendor fee. But I don't know that that one is. I'm not comfortable yet with where we are with the vendor fee. Let's just say, although there is some sort of accounting efforts being done to create a way of taking that vendor fee revenues and applying it to specific projects by outside subcontractors doing services for the business community to improve their for improvements. Where you guys sit with that, I mean, I haven't heard the feedback from you yet about that.
I'm sorry, I think I'm asking you questions that maybe are beyond where I should be asking, because you are a representative here from council, and not necessarily, because there's a lot of confidentiality that you have as a council member that needs to be certainly respected too. And we may be putting you into an uncomfortable position, and I'm sorry about that part. But I still want to know the answer.
and not only you, but the community. So I think you're quite within your purview to ask these questions, and yeah, and I don't think they've been full. There's been a lot of divisiveness on council, as we've all observed, and I think now that we have a seventh player, that might help us get some resolution with those areas. So, let's see how the future journeys, but please continue asking the questions. I think they're valid. I think they're important, and I don't think the issue of the vendor fee is really over. I don't. But it needs a little more life in it to resolution.
Sure.
Myself, I sat here and look at the sales tax vendor fee, and having read the city council minutes and everything that led up to that in 1994, that if the vendor fee were used for the city went back to the original intent of why that was done, which you suggested, and it was that it be used for all businesses along our main strip, not just the DDA boundary, but it be used for all taxpayers. And, you know, if we can get things nice enough to, you know, as opposed to raising taxes, we raise the tax revenues by attracting more people spending. Doesn't that achieve the same effect?
Yep, sure does.
Because this, I mean, this is a classic example of, you know, Congress moving to using the Social Security accounts for a slush fund. This is a classic example of why people don't trust government. Because you go back and you do research and you find out that it was a path meant to go like, not that, okay? It's maybe not being used for what the original intent was. And me as a business owner, I don't mind, you know, doing that. That maybe not cost. I mean, it cost me to submit all that paperwork and pay an accountant and do everything to make sure it's done correctly. But at the end of the day, I recognize the value to the city, and I recognize the value to the other businesses. If we actually take and improve our Main Street district.
Well, Murph, be that as it may, I'm going to say as a representative of the people, you as a business owner are far better at spending your money than the government is in taking your money and spending it for you.
You mean they're not going to come over and do my renovations? Oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
Well, aside from your playing with it, the point I'm trying to say is that the vendor fee is a value that you should receive as a business owner for submitting your taxes, which is a large percentage of what the city's revenues are composed of. And so not valuing your contribution to that process is disrespectful, in my perspective. It's fine that you want to give the taxpayer, you want to give your money into the city for a project that the city will then administer for you. That's very nice of you, but I don't know that that's the intention of the fact that at a state level and a county level, the vendor fees are returned to the business owners, and it's right and it's lawful.
I get it.
It is a
Both
revenue
ways.
source. I get it.
I get that, you know, the collective, as much as I hate that word, value of that money can do more, but at the same time, you know, it's a classic example of good intentions gone sideways.
All right.
So, I mean, I get the original intent, and I get what has happened over time. So, all right, we'll keep that one going, even though it creates some passion. General discussion. Mr. Bourne, you have anything?
Nothing additional that I haven't already bloviated on.
Okay. Nick, you got anything to bloviate on?
I do
I have nothing on which I wish to expound. You, Jerry? Tanner? Have we tenderized this horse enough?
I think so.
At this point, okay.
How about Jan? How about
Audience,
Jan?
has everybody had their opportunity to? Oh, I'm sorry, Jan.
No, you're not. I have nothing,
It's okay.
but I had the right to say that.
And I respect your elevated position to say that. Audience participation, Suzanne? Yeah.
Just want to mention that we do, I know you have an executive session, we do have a meeting in here at 10.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sally?
Thank you. 3 quick things. This Thursday, the City Council and the Planning Commission are hosting a training, Planning 101. You're welcome to join the Zoom. It's on the city calendar on the website. It is intended for the quasi-judicial groups, which is City Council, Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and Board of Review. But of course, you get into situations which are very important for long-range planning, as well as the focus will be on how to stay out of legal liability issues. So
What time Thursday?
it's at 6 p.m. this Thursday, the 12th, and again, you can access the Zoom meeting training through the city calendar.
Is it only Zoom? Is it?
No, it's also in person.
Here?
Yes, yes.
Do you need to know that? Attendance-wise?
Please, yes.
Yes.
All right, I'll put you down. As far as a little update on the panels, I do have drafts of the content. These have been sent now to the graphics designer. So I will be sharing those with you as soon as I receive them from Dave Cutler.
Awesome.
So,
That's going to go on the cog car?
excuse me?
On the cog car?
Yes.
Okay.
This is
Outstanding.
about the cog car and Zebulon Pike and the early settlers. It's a little bit more than just the cog car.
Cool.
So, Carla Schweitzer has done a nice job of pulling together the content. And then lastly, the Preservation Committee did, part of their mission is to enhance our local heritage and help educate folks. And every year they produce a poster to help communicate our heritage. And this year, because of the cod car, they decided to go with a transportation theme. And so these are all the various types of transportation over the decades. So if you would like a poster, we're happy to share that with you and give you one. And they're kind of fun over time.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
Where
Yes,
do we,
please.
where do we apply for one of those?
I just give it to you.
Awesome.
Application.
That's your business license.
I was just going to say.
My business
That went
license.
out good.
That would go in your location.
All right, I guess it's time to adjourn to an executive session. So let's take about 5 minutes to get up, get out of the nap mode. I mean,
Can I apply for one of those too, Sally?
Absolutely. Your business license. Is there two there?
Pat, did you get copies